A woman named Charlene had been sleeping on the same block in West Oakland for years. One of her neighbors was a sculptor named Gregory Clohan. She asked him for a tarp. He spent $40 on screws, dragged a pile of shipping pallets off the sidewalk, and built her a tiny house on wheels instead. When two architects in New York scaled the same idea into a refugee housing system, the city sent a bulldozer to flatten the first one they built. What happened after that bulldozer is the part nobody expected. There are two numbers behind this story that put everything into perspective. The first is 750,000. That is how many Americans have nowhere to sleep tonight. They are in shelters, in cars, on sidewalks, or out in the open with nothing above their heads. Nearly 150,000 of them are children. The second number is 21 million. Every year, the United States sends roughly 21 million wooden shipping pallets to landfills. 84% of everything shipped around the world, your food, your furniture, the medicine in your cabinet, rides on a flat wooden platform at some point. Most of those platforms get used once or twice and thrown away, and it turns out they make perfectly good walls. While politicians have spent years debating billion-dollar programs and signing off on timelines that stretch a decade into the future, ordinary people have been pulling those pallets out of dumpsters, spending pocket change on screws, and building real shelters for their neighbors. This is the story of how a pile of garbage on a sidewalk became a housing movement, and why a $40 shelter made from trash is producing better results than programs that cost 1,000 times as much. Gregory Clohan had been making oversized art installations for galleries and museums around the Bay Area for years. He worked with metal, wood, industrial scraps. He could stare at a heap of junk and see structure where other people saw garbage. That eye for material is the reason any of this happened. Sometime around 2014, the tent encampment spreading across West Oakland started changing his daily routine. Tarp cities were popping up along sidewalks. Cardboard lean-tos lined the underpasses. Clohan started paying close attention to how people engineered their own shelters from whatever they could grab. A shopping cart flipped sideways became a wall frame. Milk crates lashed together with wire became a support structure. These were people solving real construction problems with nothing. And Clohan recognized what he was looking at because that is exactly what sculptors do every day in the studio. The difference was that his studio had power tools, and these people were working with their bare hands. The morning he tripped over those shipping pallets changed everything. He stared at them lying on the concrete and saw a floor, two side walls, and a roof. He dragged them inside and started cutting. That first build was pure improvisation. 3 pallets laid flat became the base. Scraps of plywood went up as exterior walls. He pulled the door off a junked refrigerator sitting in an alley and mounted it as the front entrance. A round porthole window from a broken washing machine became the only natural light. For the roof, he collected empty coffee bags from a roaster down the block, flattened them out, and layered them like shingles so water would run off instead of pooling. He wired a small solar panel to the top so whoever lived inside could keep a lamp charged or plug in a phone. The whole structure sat on caster wheels. You could roll it down the street if you needed to move. Total cost in store-bought materials, about $40 in screws, nails, and a few pieces of hardware. Everything else came from illegal dump sites scattered across the industrial side of Oakland. Clohan later described his sourcing process completely deadpan. He said he would be halfway through a build, run out of something, hop in his truck, cruise the neighborhood until he spotted what he needed, and call that his shopping trip. He handed Charlene the finished shelter and watched her face change. She had asked for a piece of plastic to keep the rain off. She got a front door with a handle that turned. After that, Clohan walked away from the gallery world entirely. He launched the Homeless Homes Project and rebuilt his entire daily life around it. Mornings were for scavenging. He drove the industrial corridors of West Oakland, looking for dumped construction waste, abandoned furniture, and stacks of wooden pallets behind loading docks. He called what he found the fruits of the urban jungle. Afternoons he spent in his workshop, cutting, framing, and assembling. Every home he built was different because every home was made from whatever showed up that week. One had a window shutter built from a kitchen cabinet door. Another had interior shelves assembled from old desk drawers. A third had walls made entirely from reclaimed fence boards and a roof fashioned from a flattened oil drum. But three things never changed: a pitched roof so water drained, wheels so it could move, and a door that actually closed, giving whoever lived inside something a tarp or a tent could never offer. A few minutes of privacy, a few minutes where nobody was watching you try to sleep. Over the following months, Cloahan gave away more than 20 of these shelters to homeless people on his block and in the surrounding streets. Something happened that he did not expect. People started decorating them, painting the walls, hanging curtains over the windows. One man set up a small garden of potted plants outside his front door. These were not just structures anymore. They were addresses, places people came back to every night and took pride in keeping up. A formerly homeless man named Oscar Young, who had been sleeping outside for years before Cloahan handed him one of the structures, hugged the sculptor every time he came by. Cloahan never framed any of it as charity or activism. He said he was a neighbor who knew how to build things, helping neighbors who needed something built. But Cloahan was solving the problem one shelter at a time, with whatever junk he could haul in his truck bed. 3,000 miles east in New York City, two architects had looked at the same material and started thinking on a completely different scale. Susan Wines and Azin Valley ran a design firm called I-Beam. In the late 1990s, they took on a specific challenge: find the ideal building material for emergency refugee housing in Kosovo. The situation on the ground was desperate. Refugee camps were overflowing and the temporary housing available was terrible. Vinyl tents that ripped in storms, corrugated metal sheds that turned into ovens in summer and freezers in winter. Whatever replaced them needed to be cheap, recyclable, available in massive quantities everywhere on the planet, and simple enough that people with zero construction training could build with it. They considered old tires. They considered plastic bottles. Nothing fit. Then one night in 1999, Wines was walking home from the studio, still chewing on the problem, and caught her foot on a shipping pallet lying across the sidewalk. She said later that the answer had been under her feet the whole time. The logic was obvious once you saw it. Pallets already get shipped by the thousands to disaster zones and refugee camps. They carry the food, the water, the medicine. Once the cargo comes off, the pallets pile up and get burned or dumped. Wines and Valley saw those piles and realized you could turn them into walls. They engineered a modular system where standard 40 by 48-inch shipping pallets locked together to form floor sections, wall panels, and roof framing. A home of about 250 square feet requires roughly 100 pallets and a crew of 4 or 5 people working with hand tools. With power tools, the entire structure goes up in under a week. They even published step-by-step assembly diagrams, styled like the instruction booklets you get from a furniture store, clear enough that someone who had never swung a hammer could follow along. And they found that zip ties alone could hold the joints together, which eliminated the need for nails or any tools at all. The smartest part was how the design evolved over time. In the first hours after a crisis, you lash pallets together and stretch a tarp over the top. Instant emergency cover. Weeks or months later, once things stabilize, you fill the hollow chambers inside the pallet walls with whatever local material is at hand: mud, rubble, sand, cement. The pallet frame becomes the skeleton of a real, insulated, permanent home. Same material, 2 phases of shelter. and you never have to tear anything down and start over. That kind of adaptability is something an architect can design on paper, but almost never gets to see work in the real world. This one worked. The design won an award from Architecture for Humanity. I-Beam built prototypes around the world. 35 students at Ball State University in Indiana collected 500 pallets and assembled 6 finished structures in just 3 days. They exhibited at the Milan Architecture Triennale. They even built one in the Royal Gardens for Prince Charles in London. Pay attention to what happened next, because it tells you everything about the fight at the center of this entire movement. I-Beam built a prototype on a vacant lot in the South Bronx. A homeless man moved in. He had 4 walls, a roof, and a real door. The structure sat on empty land that nobody was using and had cost almost nothing to construct. New York City demolished it. A shelter that cost less than a decent dinner out, keeping a human being dry and alive, sitting on dirt nobody else wanted, bulldozed by the same city government that pours billions into homelessness programs every year. And it was not just New York. In Los Angeles, a man named Elvis Summers had spent his own money building tiny wooden houses on wheels for homeless people in his neighborhood. One of them went to a 60-year-old grandmother named Smokey, who had been sleeping in the dirt for over a decade. Summers posted the build to YouTube, and it got over 5 million views. Carpenters, teachers, retirees, even children reached out asking how to help. He raised over $60,000 and built dozens more tiny homes across the city. Each one cost about $1,200 and had a locking door, a window, and solar panels on the roof. Then city sanitation workers showed up and hauled 3 of them away on a flatbed truck. The mayor's office called them safety hazards. This from the same city that had spent years trying to pass a $2 billion homelessness plan that had largely stalled. The public backlash was immediate. Protests broke out. Eventually, the city returned the seized homes, and Summers kept building. In New Haven, Connecticut, a Catholic worker house built 6 shelters for formerly homeless people in their own backyard. The neighbors came to a zoning meeting and spoke in support. The board approved electrical service. Then the mayor reversed the approval on a technicality, and as of early 2026, residents were still using extension cords strung from the main house because the city never allowed the hookup. Cities that should be thanking these people are sending trucks instead. But the building never stopped, because while sculptors and architects were working with raw pallets and scrap wood, a woman in Everett, Washington was designing something that addressed the part of homelessness that almost everyone else overlooked. Amy King ran a construction company with her husband. A lot of their workers were people coming out of prison, rehab, or life on the streets. Those employees had personal experience with the shelter system, and they told King exactly what was broken. The big congregate shelters, gymnasiums full of cots lined up in rows, triggered trauma responses in people who were already in crisis. You are surrounded by strangers. You cannot control the noise. You cannot control the light. People had their belongings stolen while they slept. They were not allowed to bring their dogs or cats, which meant some people chose to stay outside rather than give up the only companion they had. But the complaint that surfaced over and over was so basic it almost sounded too simple to matter. There was no door they could lock. King built a company around that one insight. She called it Pallet. Each unit arrives flat-packed and snaps together in under 60 minutes using no heavy equipment and no specialized skills. 2 or 3 people can put one up in the time it takes to watch a movie. The smallest model is 64 square feet and costs about $7,500. A larger version is 100 square feet and sleeps up to 4. Every unit ships with a bed frame, electrical outlets, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, and heating and cooling systems rated for every climate in the country, and every single one has a front door with a lock and windows that latch shut. King put it simply. She said there is trauma and isolation in every case of homelessness, 100% of the time. You can hand someone a referral card or a spot in a program, but they will not engage with anything until they feel safe enough to try. A private space with a locked door is the starting line, not the finish. More than 100 communities across 16 states have installed pallet shelters since 2017, from Burlington, Vermont to Dallas, Texas, to the island of Maui. In Everett itself, the villages have doubled in size from 20 to 40 units. The city of Seattle opened its first pallet shelter village in the summer of 2026, and a staff member from Hope of the Valley Rescue Mission in Los Angeles said something that should be painted on the wall of every city planning office in America. A locking door can be the entire difference between someone accepting help and staying on the pavement. Now, if you care about this issue, there is one thing worth knowing that almost nobody talks about. The number one cause of death among homeless Americans is not violence, and it is not overdoses. It is exposure, hypothermia in winter, heat stroke in summer, the accumulated toll of sleeping unprotected in extreme weather, night after night, with nothing between your body and the ground. Tiny homes are the long-term answer, but tonight, right now, people are outside with nothing. Some volunteers have started keeping emergency thermal sleeping bags in their cars to hand out on dangerous nights. One option is called a TerraShell. It weighs almost nothing, folds to the size of a water bottle, and uses a reflective lining that traps your own body heat to create a warm barrier against wind and cold. It costs less than a meal. The link is in the description if you want to carry one. And here's the part that makes the whole story land differently. Do the math. 21 million pallets go to American landfills every single year. You need about 100 of them to build a 250 square foot house. That means this country throws away enough raw material to construct over 200,000 homes annually. We are not running low on supplies. We are running low on people willing to pick them up. And the cost comparison is staggering. A tiny home built by volunteers from salvaged pallets and basic hardware costs somewhere between $40 and a few $1,000s, depending on size and finishing. A single unit of government-funded permanent supportive housing in cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco can run north of $500,000 and take years to complete. The state of California eventually noticed. They announced the delivery of 1,200 tiny homes to Los Angeles, San Diego County, San Jose, and Sacramento, with the National Guard assisting in preparation. A government finally borrowing a page from the Grassroots playbook, admitting that sometimes smaller is faster, and faster is what people sleeping outside tonight actually need. 500 of those homes were set aside specifically for Los Angeles, the same city that had sent trucks to confiscate the ones Elvis Summers built just a few years earlier. And the process keeps getting simpler. A French company called Sofrinov has patented a system of interlocking pallet modules that lets a single person build a finished shelter in a single day. The I-beam assembly plans from 1999 are still publicly available for anyone who wants them. Chloe in Oakland is still filling his truck with scrap wood every morning. The plans exist. The material exists. The people who know how to put them together are ready. The pallets are stacked behind every warehouse, loading dock, and big box store in this country right now, waiting to either get hauled to the landfill or turned into a wall. 750,000 people have nowhere to sleep tonight. A sculptor in Oakland tripped over a pile of garbage and turned it into 20 homes. 2 architects in New York tripped over a pallet and designed a building system for the world. A business owner in Washington asked homeless people what they actually needed and built it. A man in Los Angeles spent $1,200 per house and kept building even after the city confiscated his work. Charlene asked her neighbor for a tarp. He handed her a key. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week, the kind that show you what is actually happening in this country when the cameras are not rolling. And click the video on screen right now. The story I covered there connects directly to what you just watched.